J. Benson Studios presents Journal Entry, April 18, 2006. Dear Journal, I've become the type of person that takes a great deal of personal pride in being able to steal the boyfriend of the girl I didn't like. I thought that by stealing him from her, I was showing her how much better than her I was. It made me feel powerful and proud. Mostly, it helped me forget. In those acts of defiance and hatred, a small part of me found control. The shadows that I had seen would hide themselves when I was especially cruel. I'd feel safe from the things that go bump in the night. What I didn't realize, that I'm starting to see clearly, is that I was losing the battle. I was losing the war. I gained nothing. That guy that I stole, he would have left with any other girl. I wasn't special because I stole him. He wasn't something to be stolen anyway. He was a young man with young men's needs. His needs were more important than her feelings. I don't blame him either. He was a victim of them. We all are. At the end of the day, I was ultimately responsible for my own actions and for the pain that I caused those girls, and I never even kept those boys. It was easier to discard them. I couldn't even tell you what they looked like. They were unremarkable. From the different lovers to the failing grades and lost friendships, I found myself increasingly isolated. End of journal entry.
Hey everyone, Jennifer here from J. Benson Studios. What a crazy 2020, am I right? I started using Anchor as a way to keep myself busy while I'm self isolating. But let me tell you that this has been a blast using this platform to record my podcast. I love the tools that are available because I can literally press record and have a well polished podcast with music. What's even better is that the sponsorship feature, I'm even able to generate some income. Now, that's an option we can all feel good about. So, what are you waiting for? Head over to anchor.fm and register for your account. It doesn't take long to set up, and you can have your very own podcast published to tons of places on my own at no cost to you. Don't wait. Go there now. Or wait until after my show to check it out. See you soon.
J. Benson Studios presents Chapter 5. I See You. Victoria. A male voice called out to her from inside of the room. She looked around but didn't see anyone. Her heart began to race as the goosebumps grew on her skin. Victoria, the voice called again. This time it sounded closer. She got up and walked towards the window. With hesitation, she peeked out of the curtain. There was nobody, not even casually passing by. Who's there? She called once she turned her head to look back to the empty space that was her home. Silence. As she slowly stepped away from the window, she thought she saw the reflection of a man. He had blonde hair, but his features were indiscernible. She gasped and covered her mouth. Paralyzed with fear, she was afraid to speak and afraid to turn around. She closed her eyes as her body shook and trembled. I'm going to die, was the first and only thought that ran through her mind. Silence. When she finally opened her eyes again, there was nothing and no one in the room. She could discern nothing but her own reflection staring back at her in the mirror. It was the mirror that she kept hanging on the bathroom door across from the window. She ran under the thin sheet that laid on her bed and bundled herself up as a way to seek protection. The bed dipped as though someone else had started to get on it. Terror filled her heart as the dip increased and she felt a pressure on her hip. It felt like a hand had rested there. The pressure didn't move and the room chilled even more. "You are so beautiful," she heard a male voice whisper into her ear. She trembled with fear and hesitantly responded to the voice. "Go away, you're scaring me," she muttered under her breath. The weight of the hand faded and the dip faded as well. The temperature in the room warmed and yet she couldn't move. Sleep eventually found her. Though she had hoped that this chance encounter with the blonde-haired man was just a figment of her imagination, she had not prepared herself for the regular onslaught of his affections. He'd visit her every night for weeks. It would sometimes present itself as the shadow of a man in the corner of her room. Other times she would see his face reflected in her mirror. His features over time had become more discernible. He was handsome, and she had begun to wonder if her mind was creating this handsome gentleman to help her cope with her crippling loneliness. She'd hear her name called throughout the night in a desperate plea. "I need you," this disincarnate voice would whisper in her ear, but she only ever saw his face in the mirror. "Who are you?" she found herself asking one night. She chastised herself for asking the question. It was hard to believe that anyone would willingly speak to no one, yet that is exactly what she'd done. "I've missed you," he said. She smiled. She effing smiled because if she was being honest with herself, she was lonely. This voice seemed to be drawn to her, and she needed to feel needed. The way he said her name sent shivers down her spine. It was hard for her to understand when or how it happened, but at some point, she had grown accustomed to the sound of his voice, the warmth of his hands as it would rest on her hip, the cool breeze that hit her ear when he whispered into it. In these dark moments, she had always been so afraid of the shadows. With him, he offered her comfort during a turbulent time, and she yearned for some semblance of belonging. She ached for something to make her feel whole again.